Hello, New Stoics. This is Tim, and I am gonna do the Daily Stoic a little differently today. We're not gonna read out of the Enchiridion. Uh, I planned on doing that tomorrow, but today I kind of want to get into a few things that I've kind of said offhand that may confuse some new adherents to Stoicism, or just people who are curious about Stoicism or what it is and what it's about. So, just to kind of be brief, Stoicism was developed around 500 BC or thereabouts by Zeno, who whose teacher was a cynic, and I'm going to go into what a cynic is briefly. But basically, a cynic, the Hellenistic term cynic, is not like somebody who's just a pessimist of society. It's actually a person who's an adherent of virtue ethics, but it's also somebody who's an extreme adherent to virtue ethics, to the point where it is the only thing that's important. So a cynic doesn't really care so much about making money or being popular, having friends. They think the only thing that matters is trying to be a good person. One of the original cynics, Diogenes, is very well known for not following society's rules, and he was known to live like a dog and act like a dog. And I think he kind of deserves a daily stoic all on its own because of his attitude and mores have influenced many schools of thought, and he was kind of known as a jerk a little bit, but many famous philosophy figures have that reputation, so Diogenes is not unique. But I think Zeno and many other early adherents, we don't really know that much about Zeno because none of his writings survived, but I think basically they looked at the cynics, and they really liked how they viewed virtue ethics, but there was a problem with the way that they behaved and the way they expected others to behave, and it was it just, you couldn't live a normal life and be a cynic. Basically, you had to give up everything that you felt was important, and basically live either like a pariah or a hermit, or just somebody who's really into outdoors and doesn't give a crap about making money and being well known or anything. So the Stoics kind of looked at that and said, well, they have a point. We really shouldn't care about these things, but we live in the modern world, so our philosophy should help us not only view the world, but also how to cope with some of the hard aspects of living in society. So one of the main ideas behind Stoicism was that the world is basically deterministic, but we can still make choices on how to act and how to behave. And with this thought in mind, that's where a lot of the ideas come from. So we look at anger as something we can't really control when the feeling starts to happen, but how we react with anger really does matter, and there is no real positive way, and this is from a Stoic's perspective, to do it in a right way. It's hard to be angry and virtuous at the same time, and the main originally virtue ethics Many said that it started with Aristotle. Some people say even further back with Socrates. And I would say that the Stoics uh, go after Plato and Socrates' uh, ideas of virtue ethics more than Aristotle, who had a very long list of virtues. I believe it's 15 or 20. And the Stoics felt that four virtues were the most important of all, and that's wisdom, moderation, justice, and courage. And those four virtues are the cornerstone of Stoic ethics. And so everything that we do, we kind of follow those virtues. Everything we do, we should be wise or courageous, or doing it in a just way, or something to that expect. And that's kind of one of the breaks between the modern Stoics and what I consider to be Orthodox Stoics. Is the modern Stoics look at maybe just one of the ethics, or they'll apply naturalistic ethics to modern Stoicism, or they'll apply Christian ethics to modern Stoicism, and that's okay. But for the most part, what I'm trying to do with the new Stoics, we follow the four virtues. So you'll probably see me post a lot about those four ethics, and so that's kind of what I have in common with the Orthodox Stoics. What I have that's different from the Orthodox Stoics has a lot to do with their view of metaphysics. And this is one of the original views of the Stoics, was the logos that permeates all throughout the universe. It's what most old time Stoics refer to when they talk about living according to nature. Is the original view was that the logos was inherent throughout the universe, and it would show us how to act. So if we all followed a really strict view of Stoic meta-ethics, we would be following the right path. And it was looked at somewhat religiously, I would say, that we followed the logos, whatever we did. And I think the logos is a man-made idea of the best way to act. I think virtue ethics really are strong when we base them on concrete ideas, and we can follow them the correct way. I feel like if we do that, that's the logos. That's following the logos, or following nature. I feel like if we do that, that's appropriate. I feel like that's what the new Stoics should follow as well. But I won't be real hardcore about that. I should also say that there was a movement in the Middle Ages called the Neo-Stoics that also followed this view, but they felt like the body personification of the logos was Jesus Christ. And I'm not saying Jesus was not a virtuous person, but to say that he's the embodiment of Stoic meta-ethics is a bit odd, because he did not act in a Stoic way. He was, there was times where he was very angry and he acted out because of that. There was times where he showed contempt. He was and so somebody who is the embodiment of Stoic ethics, I feel like would act more like a Stoic. But I guess it's kind of an honorable thing to incorporate Stoicism with Christianity. I feel like it's good to bring Stoicism into the modern era, so to speak, and that's kind of what the modern Stoics and what I aim to do. But yeah, there are a lot of Christian Stoics. I would say probably most people who say that they follow the Stoic ways or they are Stoic tend to be Christian, and they have they're very. I wouldn't say they look at it from the neo-Stoic point of view. I feel like they look at it as just a good way to follow virtue ethics. A lot of Catholics follow virtue ethics, so but mostly in the Aristotelian tradition. But I feel like that's kind of a good description of Stoicism. Maybe a little incomplete. I could probably go a little further into some of those ideas. Um, but I feel like that's a good kind of starting off point. I think as we go along, we'll get into more details. We'll go into the uh, Zeno, and we'll go into some of the bigger names in Stoicism, and we'll go into the movement during the Middle Ages, and then we'll go into the modern era, which is actually a lot of modern Stoicism is actually happening right now. So it's a really exciting time to be a Stoic. So thank you very much for listening. I will put in some descriptions and references to what I discussed today in the description. And I hope everybody's doing great and have a